Hello, and welcome to another episode of Morgan's Pop Talks, breaking down the latest in reality TV and pop culture. If you're watching on YouTube, I know my blush looks absolutely insane right now. I had one of those days, where you just accidentally dip the brush in a little too hard and then swipe it on your face and you don't know what happened. You don't know how you got here, you blacked out, but you could see my blush from a mile away right now. And it's it's taking everything in me not to just stare at myself in this video recording. I tried. We have so much to get into today with Bachelor in Paradise with Taylor Swift. You Swifties, is this not the best week ever? I'm not even a Swiftie and I'm so happy for you guys. We're going to get into it all, but top of the show rant, I have some major news. I'll get to it second. I have never seen more paint in my entire life. If you listened to the Seriously Show this week, David and I actually did our podcast from our new house that we have been painting together over the past week with the help of my family because I couldn't do it. It sounds so easy, right? The trim and roll the wall. I feel like such an inadequate human being when I'm trying to paint a flat surface wall. I sit there and question my existence. Do I have a brain? Do I know how to use it? Because I'm thinking about crying just looking at this wall that I have to paint because I'm worried that I'm going to mess it up. I'm going to mess it up and I'm going to make my home look just ridiculous. And that was after going through, talks with contractors and all of these things. And, look, I know the world is an expensive place right now, but I had this paint contractor tell me it was going to cost $13,000. So it's I'm sorry. I wish that I could, trust me, because the anxiety that this project gives me, I don't want to do it myself, but also I have to pay for this CT scan that I also had this week. So if you're a friend of the pod, you know that I have sounded like I've had a deviated septum for about a year now, honestly. And I've been so over it. They told me I was allergic to my dog Harley, which shame on them forever insinuating that I could in fact be allergic to one of the only things that brings me consistent joy in my life, right? I think I'm going to need a second opinion on that. So that's what I did. I went and got this CT scan knowing that it was going to cost me an arm and a leg. Couldn't paint my house, had to get my head scanned. So did that this week. Being on that table with my head in this vortex, I felt like it was the closest thing I'll ever experience to getting abducted by aliens. This is the closest thing I will ever experience to Katy Perry being in the Blue Origin, holding her little daisy and singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. I almost broke out in song because I thought that's where I was. Even the sounds, it's I'm are the aliens speaking to me? Are they trying to beam me up? Because that's how I feel right now. Thankfully, the CT scan was painless. It was quick, but let me tell you, your girl is tore up from the floor up. Okay. When I got the results to this CT scan, it was in complete gibberish to me, right? It's the gluteus maximus sinus cavitatus. And I'm I don't know what that means. But basically I put it into ChatGPT and they said my head scan lit up like a freaking Christmas tree. So I asked ChatGPT, can you explain to me how I can explain to my friends on the podcast what this CT scan said about my head? And this is what it says. It's so corny. Hey friends, I wanted to share a little health update. No, I want to give it to you straight, okay? My ENT found that all of my sinuses are blocked and inflamed. All of them. Not just the nasal passages, my cheeks, my forehead. They got nowhere to go. They got nowhere to drain. Which is why I've sounded like this for the past year. It's called chronic pansinusitis. Chronic pansinusitis. Sounds like a joy. Sounds like a walk in the park. Sounds like a frolic through a field full of daisies. I couldn't smell them because all my sinuses are blocked to the heavens and back. Not only that, my nasal septum is also deviated, which makes breathing and draining even harder. Basically, they said, my sinuses have been fighting for their life for so long. They've been inflamed for a year, which is why my allergy medication has not been working. And, you know, ChatGPT has such a way of humbling you because I'm like, what does this mean? And they're like, well, here's what they'll probably tell you next. They'll put you on a round of antibiotics. If that doesn't work, this is what they said. They said, if that antibiotic doesn't work, and based on your CT, it won't, you're going to have surgery. So that's cool. You know. But you know what? Honestly, I'm looking at this as a glass half full kind of moment because I didn't want to go get the CT done because it's always the same old story, right? Whether you're going to get an x-ray or whatever, you pay, you give them your firstborn child, and then they come back and tell you nothing's wrong. And I'm like, I don't want to do that this time. So at least I have an answer, right? Going back to the ENT on August 25th, if any of you are nurse girlies, ENTs, please slide into my DMs and tell me what I'm about to be in for. Can you give me like a little preview of the roller coaster that I'm buckling up for? Pulling down the lap bar and up the coaster we go. I'm just hoping by the end of it, I'll be able to breathe again. I'll be able to, you know, smell. There was a dead possum in my garage for 3 days and I didn't even know about it, you guys. That's how bad it's been. But anywho, let's move on to the pop 3. I mean, where else do we begin other than the fact that Taylor Swift is releasing her 12th album, The Life of a Showgirl. The Life of a Showgirl. You know, it's very... I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, and I hope that it doesn't come across that, but it's like giving chaperone, is it not? Kind of Life of a Showgirl. So Swifties were in a tizzy because Taylor Swift, she's always dropping these Easter eggs, right? Well, there was like this mysterious countdown that came on her website, orange glitter. They're like, August 12th, 12:12 p.m. or 12:12 a.m., we're going to have an announcement. Y'all are going to lose it. And right on cue, she's doing the New Heights podcast with Travis Kelce and his brother, Jason Kelce. Now, let me tell you this little insider information. I have it on good authority. I have to whisper. I have it on good authority that YouTube is legitimately concerned that it's going to crash when this podcast episode drops because of so many people wanting to watch Taylor Swift on the New Heights podcast. Can't say that I blame them, right? How did we get here? The Kelce brothers announced a very special guest earlier in the day, and of course, Swifties were on it. They don't miss a thing. She could blink 5 times and they automatically know, oh, she's coming out with a new single on October 13th. You know, that's just the way that they operate. So the clues were they were both wearing Eras Tour merch. There was the sparkly orange background. There was like a silhouette. It screamed Taylor Swift, right? She just looks like this tiny little jelly bean between 2 giants, you know, the Kelce brothers. And, you know, it's a big deal. Her last album on the Tortured Poets Department was 2024's bestseller album, right? Is this podcast going to be the most watched podcast in history? It could. It could. Now, by the time you listen to this, some of you would have already have watched it because it comes out at 7 p.m. tonight on Wednesday. But, you know, I'm doing my due diligence, okay, because Travis Kelce, the Kelces are from my neck of the woods. They're Northeast Ohio girlies. They live probably, their roots, you know, the Heights are about 25, 30 minutes from me. So the word on the street around these parts is that Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift are looking at homes in the area. So your girl might end up being neighbors with Taylor Swift. I mean, probably not because we're in entirely different tax brackets. So like we're not going to be in the same neighborhoods, but I bet I could find it. I bet I can find it. I know what Target they would go to. I know what Chipotle they would go to. So your girl's going to be on it. I'm going to be on it. I'm going to be lurking the streets. Not like paparazzi vibes, but like let's be friends vibe. I feel like I could pull it off. Okay, here's what I need from the new Taylor Swift album, a song about Blake Lively. You guys, it has to happen, right? I mean, what has been arguably one of the biggest stories that Taylor has been dragged into this past year? It's this huge incident between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively, this huge legal battle. Taylor Swift's name has been all up in it, in the middle of it. She is a Khaleesi dragon, after all, per Blake Lively, although I feel like Taylor Swift probably does not like that comparison, metaphor, whatever it is. And, every time that she has had it's not a public beef because Taylor and Blake are essentially friends. I don't know if they're friends anymore, but at a point in time, they were friends. So there's a fine line. But anytime she's gone to war with an enemy, a sworn enemy, whether it be Kanye West or Kim Kardashian, we've gotten the tea in the music. And Life of a Showgirl kind of gives me vibes that she's going to be talking about the life of a showgirl. TMZ. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Let's move on to another little sprinkle of nostalgia. The Jonas Brothers. The Jonas Brothers have kicked off their tour celebrating their 20th anniversary. We might be getting a Camp Rock 3 and Demi Lovato perform with the Jonas Brothers, and the world is okay again. The world is okay again. So let's start here. Jonas 20, that's the tour that they're going on, right? It's Greetings from Your Hometown tour. They kicked it off at New Jersey's MetLife Stadium. Obviously, they're from New Jersey. That's where they want to go. So they surprised everybody. We knew there was going to be twists and turns. We knew there was going to be surprise guests. They had Jesse McCartney singing, I don't want the pretty face. But then they have Demi Lovato come out and we're like, oh my gosh. They sang Gotta Find You. This Is Me, Wouldn't Change a Thing. Demi Lovato went on the Chicks in the Office podcast and called it healing. And I'm like, yes, girl, for you and for all of us millennials out here that have been in the trenches, okay? Okay, I said it when Justin Bieber released his new album. It's like they know when we need them. And now is the time. Now is the time. So she said it was so healing and filled my soul with warmth and love. Like it fills something else with warmth for me. Sorry. She also said, Joe just asked me last week. That was wild. That was wild. She said, Joe just asked me last week. You've been a huge part of our journey. We would love to have you there. It was an instant, let's do this. She said they came into my dressing room, we hugged, they got to know my new husband. There's such a history there. Of course, we know Demi Lovato famously dated Joe Jonas for quite some time. Demi Lovato wrote a song about Nick Jonas, Ruin the Friendship. And before I move on to this potential Camp Rock 3 situation, doesn't Demi Lovato look so incredibly good? She looks so good. And I feel like, as somebody who grew up watching Demi Lovato and we have seen her at the highest highs and the lowest lows, she's been very open about her struggles with addiction and mental health. And you always just deep down were rooting for Demi Lovato to be the Demi that we see now. You know what I mean? Like when I saw her in that little glitter denim outfit, I was like, this is the Demi that we fell in love with. This is the Demi that we love. She's glowing from the inside out. You can tell she's happy, she's healthy, she's in love. And it feels good to know. I feel like we're kind of on that path right now with a lot of our favorite celebrities from childhood. Look at Lindsay Lohan and the Freakier Friday success. It's like you see these people that could have gone down a very dark and bad path. And at some point in life, did, and we see how it ends with a lot of other celebrities. So to see these two girlies just owning the entertainment industry right now, I'm so excited about it. I'm so happy. I'm just like, yes, 2025, it's for the redemption arc for the girlies. So is there a Camp Rock 3 coming out? Joe Jonas kind of let it slip on Hot Ones. So all 3 of the Jonas Brothers were on Hot Ones, and one of the questions said, read the latest entry in the Notes app on your phone out loud. So Joe did. He said, read Camp Rock 3. So that was in his notes. To read the script of Camp Rock 3, Nick put his drink down, looked up in surprise. Kevin was like nervously laughing. I was like, okay, that's a pretty good one. And Joe's like, it's the truth. It's literally right here. Sorry, Disney, he says. So it makes sense, right? They have this big reunion for Jonas 20 with Demi Lovato and the brothers. They're going to do a Camp Rock 3. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. We're here for it. All right, let's move on to headline number 3. Wow, I'm so long-winded today, you guys. It's crazy. Clayton and Rachel. Clayton and Rachel, you guys. What is going on with Clayton Echard and Rachel Recchia? I've never been big into Perfect Match, but I did watch it because I saw that there was some drama between former Bachelor couple, Clayton Echard and Rachel Recchia. Of course, we all know what happened on Clayton's season. Rachel went on to be the Bachelorette. But they coupled up for a brief second, or match for a brief second, and then Clayton and his intuition the next day said, I can't date you. Okay, whatever. That was like shocking. But then Clayton goes on the Vile Files and he starts being really cryptic about Rachel and why his intuition kicked in and decided that they should no longer be together. So he refused to name him because he said Rachel would feel like it was an attack on her. And we're all like, what in the world? I mean, the vagueness of it really made it worse than what it actually was, based on, what she said it was, which we'll get to later. But everybody was spiraling because we're like, what is happening in these behind closed doors moments with Rachel Recchia, right? Whether it was her and Zach Shallcross in their fantasy suite, or now it was Clayton and Rachel on Perfect Match when the cameras went down filming for this Netflix show. So Rachel goes on AD's podcast, who is also on this season of Perfect Match. It's What's the Reality? It dropped yesterday, August 13th. And she was like, basically saying Clayton really made a big deal out of this and made it worse than it should have been. Rachel said his vague approach was more evil than just saying what it is because it led people to think she was doing weird stuff behind closed doors. And then she says, according to Clayton, it's because I'm not a gym girly. She said Clayton wants somebody with a very active lifestyle who goes to the gym and lifts weights. Rachel prefers traveling, shopping, sitting at the bar, and going on hot girl walks. Says it's never going to be me when it comes to, bulking season, pretty much. And then Rachel clarifies. She said, I called Clayton after he did this interview because I was like, what the heck? What is he even talking about? And here's where I do give Clayton like a little bit of benefit of the doubt. She's like, he didn't mean that I had a bad body, and that's why he didn't want to say it. Because if he comes out and says, I want somebody with a more active lifestyle, she's like, people could take it as he's calling her lazy or insinuating that he doesn't like the way that she looks physically, right? So he didn't mean it at all by that. He thought it would be perceived as an attack on her body. But she says, if you want to date Clayton Echard, you better be hitting the weights. You guys, I was floored when I first heard this. Like Clayton's big reason for his intuition doing a 180 is because she doesn't like to go to the gym every day. I get wanting to have a partner that has similar hobbies than you. I get it. But different hobbies can work too, especially one as trivial, honestly, as going to the gym. It's like, do you think that's going to be detrimental to your relationship that Rachel doesn't run 8 miles a day? Was Susie hitting the dumbbells every day? I don't know. I mean, if that really is the deal breaker, because some people think that it's not. Some people think that may be just an excuse that he said to kind of, whatever. If that really is the deal breaker, I can't help but wonder if Clayton is doing himself a disservice by narrowing down that dating pool entirely too much. You know what I'm saying? I've been saying that a lot this episode, haven't I? You know what I'm saying? All right, let's move on to this week's deep dive. Paradise is on fire. And I know I've been doing a lot of Paradise deep dives lately, but honestly, I'm really enjoying it. I say it every week. I feel like it's getting better and better. There are some things that I think need some work, but in general, it's the hot show right now ever since Love Island stopped airing, which, by the way, they did film their reunion this week, and Hurrdat was there. There was some rumors that she might not be. She was. So Paradise has fallen because Bailey gets this devastating news that Jeremy wanted Susie, called Susie. This whole saga has really exploded. If you don't watch Bachelor in Paradise, I'm going to tell you what happened. I'm going to tell you the social media reaction, and I'm going to tell you, of course, my opinion on it. So Bailey's falling in love with Jeremy, right? But she doesn't know that a lot of things have been said behind her back about Susie, who came down, was there for 24 hours, and then left kind of on a bit of a whim because Justin offered her like a pity rose. She turned it down. So both her and Justin went home. And then Jeremy is like, well, if I would have known that Susie was going to reject his rose, I would have given her my rose, right? So he was very upset that Susie left and he gave her his rose to Bailey, that rose ceremony. But all of these things were said, and some days have gone by, which days in Bachelor in Paradise are like dog years, like if it's 7, it's actually been 28 days. So it feels like a blast from the past to Jeremy, right? He's like, these things happened so long ago. I called Susie 7 days ago. That was early on in Paradise. I was just playing Paradise. We're supposed to be exploring these love connections, but right now I am falling deeper for Bailey. Well, you have Brian, who A, wants to win the $500,000 in this new twist, B, is friends with Bailey, per se, and he decides to tell her. Not only does Bailey find out in this moment that Jeremy said these things, that he would propose to Susie on the spot, that he called her, that, he regrets giving Bailey the rose, she finds out that a handful of her friends have known about this as well and did not tell her about it, and the information came from Brian. Which Brian hasn't been the most likable character throughout the season because in his couple with Parisa, sometimes the way that he speaks to her is condescending, kind of rude, like kind of jerkish. So people haven't been the biggest fans of Brian. But now we're in this interesting situation where he's the only person that brought this information to Bailey that she needed to know. And you have people much closer to her who knew about it and didn't tell her. So Bailey is very upset. She goes and she wakes up Jeremy. He's fast asleep with his eye mask, getting his beauty rest, which honestly, I can't say that I blame him, but he's like dazed and confused when Bailey comes in crying. He's like, I don't know, am I in a fever dream? Like, I don't know what's going on. She says, did you call Susie? And he's like, yeah. Like, it could be the edit. Like I said, he could be in a little bit of a nap haze because you guys know, like when you wake up out of a deep slumber, like I black out. I black out the first hour of my day, and it's not because I drink alcohol like in the morning. I don't do that, but I'm just saying every day I don't remember like the first hour of it because I'm in a haze, I'm in a fog. But anyways, even though he just woke up, he like didn't seem very how do you say it? Communicative. You guys get it. You get it. My nasal passages are too blocked for me to be able to say that word. I'm like, is this the edit? Are they like making him edit that he's like sleep drunk and not really communicating with her? And then he goes back to sleep. She's like, I want to go home. And he's like, oh, I want to go back to sleep. You know what I mean? It's like crazy. Meanwhile, everybody on the beach is running around trying to figure out who told Bailey. Well, it probably is the guy that was just sitting next to Bailey for however many minutes. And then she walked up crying. Like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that Brian was the one who told Bailey. But it's like, the vibe is, who dare tell Bailey? Everybody else wants her to watch it back 6 months later on national television and watch her relationship get dragged through the mud. Detrimental to the relationship in the long run. But they're like, we can't say anything because Jeremy is our dog. That's what it feels like. And we're like, what is happening? I actually think that a lot of this goes back to what Jonathan said last week about people operating out of fear. I think Clayton did it with not wanting to say the situation with Rachel. I think now all of the rest of the cast are operating out of fear that they don't want to meddle in other people's relationships because they don't want to come across as a meddler. You know what I mean? But it didn't really work out well for the rest of them in this situation because the audience is very much so team Brian. I was waiting for Dale. Dale is just like kind of has a superiority complex and it drives me a little bit nuts. But he's sitting there talking to Brian and he's like, it wasn't you, was it? And Brian, like, he doesn't say yes. He doesn't say no. He's just like, sits there and stares at him, and he's like, yeah, I knew you wouldn't because your character's better than that. You know, I was waiting for Dale to be like, I know you didn't say that because your upbringing, you know, like he said to Kat. It's like, Dale, what are you talking about? 95% of the time, I don't know what you're talking about. Brian does a terrible job at hiding the fact that he was the one that told Bailey. I do think Brian should have been straight up about the fact that he was the one who told Bailey, but it is a lose-lose situation for Brian because, first of all, people already don't like him. People are already side-eyeing him for the way that his relationship has played out with Parisa, and I can't necessarily say that I blame the other Paradise goers because of that. You know, even Andrew Spencer, he was on the Vile Files this week, and he says, Brian is like a wolf in sheep's clothing. You think he's lying because he just doesn't come off as a good guy. So even if he is telling the truth, how do you know for sure he's telling the truth if you weren't in that room or in the situation? 2, before anybody even knew that it was Brian, the vibe for the rest of the house was, who would do that? Who would do such a thing? Who would stoop so low? Who's the snake, right? So it's like, I think he started to backpedal because of that reaction, and it ended up making the situation worse in the long run because everybody found out it was him anyways. And everybody was gonna find out that it was him anyways. It's Paradise. You really think anybody would be able to keep that type of a secret? No. So he just should have been honest from the get-go. In an episode that had so many ups and downs and twists and turns, I think the most surprising thing, one of the most surprising things, was how quickly Bailey was to forgive Jeremy. It was like record speed. You know, if it were me, I would have Jeremy be making me breakfast. I would have him cut out my initials in the pancakes, a la Love Island. I would be getting foot massages every hour on the hour. I would make him go find me an emotional support hermit crab on the beach to have as a pet to make sure that I had somebody there for me in my times of trouble because he's not going to be, you know, like he would have had to done some groveling to get back with me. But it put Brian in an even worse spot because when Bailey forgives Jeremy, everybody else essentially has to forgive Jeremy. And now the pressure is completely off of him and it's on Brian because he's the one that let the cat out of the bag. It's so bizarre. It's so weird. And you know, they're all on podcasts, social media posts. What are the people saying? So Jeremy posted this. Watching the past few weeks back has been tough. A lot of what's aired doesn't show the full story, the small, meaningful moments or important conversations that brought Bailey and I closer. Our relationship grew so much beyond the 0.1% of what's shown on TV, but unfortunately, so much of the focus has been on a small part of what we actually experienced in Paradise. My time on the beach wasn't perfect. There were many ups and downs, and I'll own the mistakes I made. At the end of the day, only Bailey and I know the reality of what we went through, and I hope people can respect that. I'm never one to be like, Jeremy is a bad guy or anybody, right? Because the reality is that we really do only see 0.1% of what happened. I do think that there's a very real possibility that in the early days, Jeremy was playing Paradise, said things that he regretted. And I still think that his relationship with Bailey now can grow and evolve and they can fall in love with each other. I think, you know, the issue, really, when it all boils down to it, the issue is that Jeremy was not the one to tell Bailey, and he should have. Point blank, period, right? He should have. They should have moved on from it, and that is what it is. Bailey also is responding to something that Andrew Spencer said. Andrew tweeted this. He says, also funny that y'all are tripping about us not telling Bailey about a phone call that we have no context to, but okay with the fact she didn't tell Parisa that Brian was the one who asked her to go on a secret rendezvous when she had no context to his intentions yet. Which I'm like, I love Andrew, don't get me wrong, but why are you coming at Bailey? Why are you shooting shots at Bailey? Like, again, blaming people that really should not be blamed in the situation. And this is what Bailey said back. Let me be clear, she says. The reason I didn't immediately tell Parisa was because I first needed to process what was going on and then speak to Jeremy. There you have it. Right there. The order of operations. PEMDAS. Tell your person in the couple first. Bailey did it. Jeremy did not. So she says, I chose not to do a secret rendezvous because it was a secret. I was planning on having a conversation with Brian that night, not in secret before he pulled me. I had every intention of telling Parisa if there was sneaky intent, but between the note and telling Jeremy was about an hour of time. I would like to make clear-headed decisions, and I would not have held something like that from anyone on my cast. I'm allowed to process what's going on in front of me. I'm glad I didn't immediately tell her before speaking to Brian because it would have resulted into a bigger issue when Brian did not have ill intent with our conversation. Preach, Bailey. She also says, this season has been a lot for me emotionally and mentally. No one is perfect, and I believe in giving those I care about grace. I wish those close to me wouldn't continue to add to what's going on, but I did want to justify my actions in the moment, and I believe I moved correctly. Point blank, period. Best black background white text post I have ever read. Because she's right. She's right. Andrew Spencer, he's been very vocal about this on Twitter, and also he went on the Vile Files, and he's still standing 10 toes down. He's like, you know, when we heard about the phone call with Susie, we didn't know the full details. We didn't know the context. So why am I going to go up to Bailey and say, hey, by the way, Jeremy called Susie when I don't know what was said on the phone? He says, seeing it now, it's obviously worse than I thought. He says, I think the biggest thing that everyone's not really seeing is how long Brian knew about this knowledge and the timing in which he brought it up. He says, when the money and the competition became a thing, he was like, oh, I think this is a good time for me to tell Bailey. That doesn't make any sense to me. He says, I think it was in bad faith. It wasn't in good faith. At that point, Brian had never talked to Bailey on the beach, like never had. You never saw them have a conversation. So Brian portrays his relationship with Bailey as a very good one, and he loves her. But Andrew says on this podcast that Brian and Jeremy were the ones that were actually close. Long story short, though, I get why the rest of the cast is side-eyeing the fact that Brian was the one to bring this information to Bailey. His track record isn't exactly spotless on this season of Bachelor in Paradise. But here's what they're missing, both in the moment and now on social media, on podcasts, sharing their perspectives online. The bigger issue is that nobody told Bailey sooner. You know, days went by, other people knew, people told Jeremy to tell her, and he never did. So it's like the lesser of two evils, right? Of course, it looks kind of bad that Brian decided to bring this information to Bailey once the $500,000 twist got involved. But the bigger issue is that nobody told her, including her romantic partner, including some of her closest friends, you know? It was a wrong that needed to be made right. And like it or not, Brian was the one who finally did it. And the bigger mistake would have been saying nothing at all. Sorry, you know? It is what it is. Let's move on to final thoughts. So there is more drama going on right now with Brooks Nader and Gleb Savchenko. So you guys remember Brooks and Gleb, they were partners on Dancing with the Stars. They fell in love. They dated on again, off again. They broke up. There's cheating allegations. Well, Brooks and her sisters are coming out with a new reality show called Love Thy Nader. That reality show trailer dropped this week. Fans are buzzing over it because a lot of the content is going to be about Brooks and Gleb's on and off again relationship. And, you know, in the trailer, she accuses him outright of cheating on her. She says he's a cheater and I have proof. In the trailer, you do hear Gleb respond to that claim. It's like a voiceover, and he says it's sad what some people will make up to promote their reality show. So Gleb, we kind of knew that. Like, we knew that that would play out when we saw that Brooks and her sisters were getting a reality show. It played out in the media, so like that isn't really what's shocking. The shocking part about this is Gleb is insinuating that he was not asked back for this season of Dancing with the Stars because of Brooks's lie. I'm using the air quotes because he's saying that it's a lie. So on TikTok, Gleb said, your source needs a refund because that story, 100% fake, hashtag lies. And then somebody responded and said, give that flop reality show zero attention. Gleb liked it. Here's where Gleb is insinuating that he got fired from Dancing with the Stars because of what Brooks is alleging, that he cheated, right? So he said 14 years of loyalty erased by someone's lie. He said that in the TikTok comments, and this is right after the Love Thy Nader trailer dropped. Would Dancing with the Stars really not ask Gleb back because Brooks said he cheated on her? Well, I think there's a lot to consider here. I think that both shows will air at the same time, technically under the same network. You know, Love Thy Nader comes out at the end of August. Dancing with the Stars starts in September. And from what we've seen from the trailer, a lot of content for Love Thy Nader is going to be about Brooks and Gleb and their relationship and the fallout of their relationship. So depending on how many people end up watching Brooks's show, it's like, can you have a show? Can you have two shows on the same network at the same time where one show is like dragging this guy through the mud because she alleges that he cheated on her, and then flip the channel and be asking fans to vote for him to win Dancing with the Stars? You know, it is a little bit messy. I also could understand the thought process behind the scenes of, okay, well, what if we partner somebody with Gleb and, you know, Love Thy Nader takes off and everybody's coming for Gleb? It puts his partner at an unfair disadvantage because they might vote him off the show just because it's him. You know, these are all things that they might be thinking behind the scenes. It might get messy, and maybe Dancing with the Stars didn't want to go down that path. You know, Dancing with the Stars, they do switch up the pros a lot, you know, where it's like they'll have some pros come in, take a couple seasons off, come back. So it's not to say that we'll never see Gleb on Dancing with the Stars again, but he is alleging that it's because of Brooks that we're not going to see him this season, which is kind of wild when you think about it. All right, you guys, there you have it. I hope you feel caught up. I hope you feel ready to talk to all of your friends about what's going on in the world of reality TV and pop culture. If you haven't left a review, please do so. A little 5-star boop boop, a little love you like a sis. If not, just do it. Like, there's no if not option. Just do it. A little 5 stars. It takes 5 seconds, and then you'll be on your merry way. I'll see you back next week for another episode of MPT. And as always, love you like a sis.